Hello, this is Muffins for Men, and today I am here to do a One Piece chapter review. It's the first one that I'm ever recording, though I've been caught up with the One Piece manga week in, week out for many years now, like kind of approaching 2 decades, I think. So, if you're new to my channel or if you haven't done any of this yet, please like, comment, subscribe if you're a massive fan of One Piece's amazing plot, and I'm going to be getting into that right now. Needless to say, if you are not caught up with the One Piece manga, get the fuck out of here. Don't spoil yourself. Don't do that to yourself, right? If people try and get into it on Egghead, you're an adult. You are an adult, start it from the beginning. Just do it. You don't want to spoil it for yourself. There's other stuff that you can spoil easy. That's fine. Either way, Diatribe over. We're on chapter 1152, An Awful Day, which I have to disagree with. It's an amazing day. In the UK, it's bright, it's sunny, it's lovely, and there is a new chapter of One Piece. How can that be a bad day? Really? So, Holy Inari pilgrimage with Yamato. We love what Yamato has been doing here. It's obvious she is making the new Azakaya 9. I think I said that right, Azakaya 9. It sounds a bit like Izukaya, so I'm thinking like it's kind of wrong. But the red scabbards, she's making the new ones. She's got page 1 and Ulti along with her. And they've obviously just delivered Otama's lovely hat to Kawamatsu. We love that. I love Kawamatsu's look. And yeah, it's nice to start seeing some of Wano where it's no longer kind of fucked, for lack of better words. So it's very nice to see that going well. And then we start off the actual chapter proper. And we are in what's it called? Hell Land or whatever, Nightmare Land, the Underworld. We are in the Underworld and we're looking up at the realm of the sun where Conqueror's Haki is coming down because of obviously what is happening up above. Gonko, Imu, scary shit. And so they're saying, Gerd, we'll leave this sack of filth in your care. Loki is getting so much hate and it's been built up and I love that it's consistent throughout. So yeah, everybody is panicking. Obviously, they need to get up top so they can actually help save the children of Elbaf. Chopper is staying down so that he can help to heal Skyopa-Gaban. Good thing, we cannot lose Skyopa-Gaban right now. We need him. We need him to give us some proper instruction in Conqueror's Haki and all that kind of stuff afterwards. So obviously, he's chatting with Luffy, and he reveals these guys are by no means immortal. Be mindful of the way that you use Conqueror's Haki. So it's obvious, much like with the Armament Haki back in Wano and stuff, the Ryo, the different applications, there is another application which may be more well known in Elbaf that Luffy needs to pick up. So is Skyopa-Gaban going to teach him that? I kind of doubt it. I think Skyopa-Gaban is going to be teaching Zoro for reasons that we'll get to later on in the thing. I think that Luffy is going to naturally progress that himself. He's going to be doing his thing. So, yeah, Luffy is saying, you can count on me. I'll say Colon and his friends no matter what. You better do. You better do. And there we go. Loki says, Gyaban, that just made it click for me. Speaking of click, an ad is coming up. Get rid of that. Yeah, man, that just made it click for me. I wasn't able to put it into words before. My own power. I'm the only one left who's faced these knights before. I know I can face them. So you can take this a few ways. One way could just be based on the interactions before in this arc, where Loki has been attacked by Shamrock and Gunko and stuff. He's faced them in battle before. But that wasn't really a battle per se, as more like a one-sided thrashing, let's be honest. So is there a possibility that Loki was actually fighting with them in the past? We'll get to that again a bit later, because I think that actually, based on some dialogue later on, there's a good chance that he has faced them in another circumstance. So he's begging Hyrodin to free him and take him with them. And Hyrodin obviously cannot believe that he's fighting for Elbaf. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Personally, I don't believe that Loki did it. Let's see what transpires. So, Skyopa-Gaban gives a big reveal that there's another in the group who can use Conqueror's Haki. I wonder who that is. Wonder who could that be who can also use Conqueror's Haki on the crew? We've been saying it since before Shabondi. It's Zoro. Of course it's Zoro. But Sanji seems to think that it's him. Poor Sanji. Is it me? I knew it with how things were going. Mosshead and Jinbei were about to usurp me. He's even aware of it. He's nervous about it. He's scared about it. And it's happening. Now, as a Sanji stan myself, I love Sanji. Not my favourite Straw Hat. That probably goes to Usopp. But as a Sanji stan myself, goddamn, you need to put in some effort now, Sanji. You've got so much going for you. You know, he's got his improved Germa physique and stuff. Like, you've got to remember that in terms of feats of strength and stuff, like pure lifting weights or, you know, kicking things, blah, 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 Zoro and Sanji are actually pretty well matched. But Zoro is training every fucking day. You see him on the boat, always lifting, fucking doing massive fucking curls and shit. What's Sanji doing? He's just simping. He's just simping, and yet he still manages to keep up with that. Like, if Sanji put in the same effort as Zoro did, I think that Zoro would not be the strongest in terms of pure, like, muscle mass or anything like that. But it'll probably ruin Sanji's figure, and he thinks, you know, muscle head jocks and stuff like that. So, you know, Sanji, you've been sleeping. You need to awaken Conqueror's Haki. That being said, Sanji with Conqueror's Haki, he's just going to try and conquer hearts, isn't he? You know? But yeah, so Skyoppa points out to Zoro that his body is growing accustomed to using Conqueror's Haki. And Zoro he's been ignorant to this, apparently, this entire time. I have Conqueror's Haki? Huh? Meanwhile, it seems Luffy has been aware of this for quite a while. He's noticed it. He's saying it's been oozing off of you. Now, obviously, we know that Luffy, oftentimes there's a lot of stuff which he doesn't feel the need to communicate. He doesn't feel the need to talk about and everything like that. But this is obviously taking him by big shock. He must have thought that Zoro already knew it. And to me, I'd have thought that Zoro would have already knew it just based on the whole stuff with Enma back in Wano. You know, I occasionally look over the screen because I'm looking at my brother. You know, he's back there behind it and stuff, bouncing board and shit. I promise he exists. Okay, I'm not crazy. And we yeah. Just a little. Whose hand is that? Yeah, no. So in Wano, like the whole thing with Enma was that it was eating the haki. Whether or not Zoro actually knew that was Conqueror's Haki that he needed, I don't know, but. I would have thought that he would have connected them, but also Zoro done. So, okay. It even comes to a point where when Skyoppa is saying like how absurd that is a power that needs to be understood and tamed, I feel like that's kind of some Skyoppa glazing for Zoro right there. You know? Like, obviously we saw Luffy use it unconsciously and stuff back in Amazon Lily and everything. But like, it seems like Zoro's application has actually been a bit more precise. And so Skyoppa's, you know, impressed / a bit horrified. I think probably horrified because that's a power that should be under more control that's just been let to run amok. To the point that Zoro gets impressed upon himself and says, my bad. One of the rare occasions that you'll see Zoro apologizing for anything in the entire manga. So that's a great moment there. And obviously, Sanji is still going, hey, oh man, what about me? And he's just being ignored. Sanji, you got to work on your stonks a bit, man. You got to work on your stonks, especially because when you look at the parallels between the crew and stuff, you have, obviously, Luffy and Gold Roger, you got Zoro and Rayleigh, and then you've got Sanji and Skyoppa. Like, they've got their love themes and all that kind of shit. And Skyoppa was saying that he was the second strongest on the crew, right? And that kind of, like, nod to the rivalry and everything like that. So, Sanji, come on. You got to get that number 2 spot, boy. So, we've got Loki. He's saying, use me, you know, and who's to say you won't side with the government? You could easily stab Elbaf in the back again, just like that day. There's more and more piling up towards this. Now, I was saying before when I was first looking at this, you know, he's got a little bit of a sweat bead going down the side of his face, you know. Ugh. Loki feels guilty about this for some reason. Now, I personally still believe, and I had this belief before I read this full chapter, that Loki was not responsible for whatever fucked up shit happened there with King Harold, right? But that sweat drip, there's something there that Loki feels guilty about. There's something there that Loki feels bad about. So, Hyrodin's being pressured to go, and Luffy, as Luffy is wont to do, goes, hey Loki, join my crew! No idea what that noise was just there. Some technical issues, technical difficulties, but oh, it was my brother's phone. Tut. we're not going to edit it out. It's going to stay in there for good, you know. You need to hang your head and I'm joking.
Hey Luffy sounded like Hey Google.
Oh, did it? Wait, let me try it again. Hey Luffy! No, it didn't work that time. Okay, well, you never know. Maybe in the future we'll get it again. But he asks Loki to join his crew. My first reaction, how the fuck is he going to fit on the boat? Apparently that's the same first reaction of Zoro and Sanji as well. Zoro, how's he going to fit? Sanji, how the hell are we going to feed him? So I'm glad to see that I was on a similar wavelength as at least Zoro there. But yeah, Luffy's saying, join my crew. Loki's joining the crew, guys. Loki's joining the crew. Has there ever been a One Piece character that Luffy has asked to join the crew who hasn't? I'll give you a second to think. Myself and my brother, we're thinking. I'm pretty sure the answer is no. Anybody that Luffy has asked has joined the crew. The one who kept us waiting the longest was Jinbei. He had to be asked like 3 times. So perhaps we'll have to ask Loki again at the end of the arc or something. But I'm of the belief Loki is going to be joining the crew. And that's going to be another level to the crew entirely. It's peak at that point. And yeah, he's saying that if he does, then you can't complain if I free him, right? Harudin? Like, Luffy is becoming more and more aware of his role as the captain, of his authority, of his power and his responsibilities. We've been seeing this throughout the entire story. A lot of people are like, oh, Luffy's dumb. He's stayed dumb throughout the whole thing, you know, what character growth, blah, blah, blah. He's had great character growth. Like, ever since VV chewed him out back in Alabasta and stuff, he's been working his way. Ever since Boa Hancock forced him to be exposed to somebody's backstory, because before then he would just fucking ignore it, he's taken a more active interest in the actual stories of people's lives. That's not to say that he will completely tune in. We saw him with Skyopa Gaban before. Oh yeah, cool. Oh, what's that over there? You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, he doesn't care unless he really feels the need to, but in this situation, you can best be sure that he's taking it seriously. So, yeah, Zoro, Sanji protesting, but Luffy, big smiles, gives no fucks. It seems okay to me. Besides, if he tries anything, I can beat him up. And bear in mind, Luffy, full of confidence always, and we love that. But he has seen, like Loki, go around and bash the tree and release a huge amount of power, and he's still confident that he can take him on. We love that. That's going to be great. So obviously Loki vehemently denies this. Don't mess with me, you runt. There's no way I'm becoming your underling. But we'll wait and see. I bet he will. You're going off your gut, huh, Straw Hat? Like, you can see right here, Harudin is, you know, he's becoming more receptive. If Luffy trusts him, and if Luffy's gut is saying that's right, then what can Harudin do apart from believe in Luffy? He's got experience with that. Dressrosa and everything before, you know, everything leading up to the escape in Dressrosa and everything like that. He knows that Luffy is a great judge of character. And we know this. We've seen it throughout the whole thing. Luffy can accurately gauge somebody's fuckiness, right? And Loki is passing the vibe check. I'm down for it. You best be down for it too. Or get the fuck... No, please stay. So, Harudin's being pressured to go. But after the plea of Skyopa Gaban, Harudin decides that he needs to stay behind and chat and figure out what the hell is going on. Now, this is something as well. If Skyopa is saying, Harudin, release Loki, if Skyopa's got some information, why has he stayed quiet about it for so many years? It's been like 14 years, and he could have spoken perhaps to help out. Is Skyopa Mosha? No. No, because he was communicating whilst falling down. Like, that's not happening. But why has he not revealed that information? I'm very intrigued to find out. So, the accusations come out. What was that? 14 years ago, Loki murdered 113 members of the Castle Guard. He left Elder Jarrell at the brink of death, killed his own father in cold blood. He's the worst criminal our country's ever known. In a place like Warland Elbaf, becoming the worst criminal, that's pretty up there. Like, we've had examples before of Odin. Odin, when he was going around Wano in the past, he was a fucking menace. You know? As a little kid, he was going around and, you know, taking out loans and going gambling and all sorts of shit. So, Is it possible that Loki was a shit? Yes, 100%. Of course. But is he responsible for all of these things? I think not, and we're going to get further into that. On that day, I felt a strange emanation of haki coming from the castle. Shanks and I went there to investigate. It's possible we didn't have the whole story. So Shanks was there too. And this is going to lead some very interesting speculation points there. So you went to the castle. Did you just say Shanks? So Hyrodin at this point is like, go on ahead. You got to go. I am not staying behind. I'm not going up to the Sun Realm with you. I'm staying behind to find out what's happening here. Zoro, meanwhile, Sanji, they're going to go off. Luffy says, I'll catch you in a bit. And Zoro says that this is the whole dumb Shanks thing again. Now that triggers Luffy a bit. You don't go calling Shanks dumb. But Sanji stands up for Zoro, rare occasion, saying, you're the dumb one! Which I love. That's great. But here, Loki's saying, yeah, man. And he's got this awkward look on him. He doesn't want it brought up. But he has 3 minutes to explain. That's what Hyrodin gives him. And he tells him to swear on our gods that what you say is the truth. And this leads to, that's cruel, brother. You really want me to live that day? I don't want to remember. It was an awful day. Ties in with a chapter name. Great. Okay. Nice. Especially for the day that it dropped on. I was like, what do you mean an awful day? It's a great day. But Goda, in all of his foreshadowing, foreseeing knowledge, I don't think that he predicted the UK weather today for this. So, we go in and we've got Loki falling down and landing just outside of the West Castle. And Elder Gerald is arriving in a boat, coming down from the sky there as well. So, they didn't travel together, but they arrived at the same time. And it's revealed that they were summoned by King Harold. Loki, it seems like he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder because he keeps on mentioning, it comes up a few more times later on, but he keeps on saying, this is my family's home, Like it's all Loki has returned. This is my family's home. It may be that Loki was kicked out of home for being too much of a dickhead, right? Like he feels the need to reiterate he has a right to be there, which he wouldn't need to do if he was immediately welcomed, right? So, I wonder what he wants. It's hard to care about the whims of a government dog. He sold out to the people who killed Rox. Okay. So Loki knew Rox, and we knew this because obviously they got in that fight before and stuff. Loki was a kid and Rox attacked him. But it seems Loki has respect for him. Now, this leads me to think about the whole God Valley incident and stuff. It seemed implied from that flashback before that Loki did not end up traveling with Rox and stuff. But it's important to note, Kaido, who was pretty young at that time, did end up traveling with Rox. So did Rox have a change of mind and allow kids to come along? If so, Loki could have potentially been at God Valley. Again, we did not see him in the flashback, so this is speculation and unlikely to be true, but food for thought. And perhaps he could have clashed with the God's Knights then. And that's why he says, I've faced them before and stuff. That being said, I think it's more likely that he is referring to the Elbaf incident just now where he got absolutely bodied. And if that's the case, that's not a good credential to put on your name of, yeah, I faced those guys, I can take them. I was almost killed, Couldn't fight back at all, but he was locked up, but still. So, they're discussing about the politics and stuff, etc. And Loki does not like the peaceful generation, the peaceful directions that have been taken. It's a sign of the times. My great-great-grandchildren won't see combat. They want peace, blah, blah. Coward, it's your duty to whip them into shape. Loki is keeping up the old guard of things. He's got that violence, and he believes that violence is necessary. Now, Warland Elbaf, changing to Peaceland Elbaf, a lot of people would say that it's a good thing to be moving towards peace and stuff. But when you're cooperating with something like the world government to achieve it, is that really a good thing? You're just preserving the status quo, of which we know is very evil. So, to me, it would be right to struggle against that, And so changing Warland Elbaf to Peaceland Elbaf is actually something that's going to cause great untold suffering across the world. So I agree with Loki here. It's just like with good old Garrosh back in World of Warcraft. That's my war chief. Fight me on it. So, thank you for coming, Elder Jarl, Loki. I mean, young master, it's a pleasure to have you back. So he's been away for a while. And Loki's like, of course. Well, let me just consult with the king. Open up, you idiot. And he boots that door in. Boots it in right through the guard as well. Now, I want to point out, Loki was, apparently, he'd killed 113 of the castle guards and stuff. If Loki was that murderous, would he not have just squashed him with Mjolnir, with his hammer? You know? Could have picked up a sword from somewhere and cut him down, but instead he just kicks him into the thing. It's violence. It's, you know, it's pretty abhorrent, but it's not killing him. So bear that in mind. And they open up the door, and what do they find in there? But the palace guards are stabbing King Harold through. What's happening? There's probably a few things that we can think about. Maybe they are being directly manipulated. You know, like their bodies are being controlled. Ooh, the light's flickering. Okay, Emu, I ain't blaming you. But maybe they're being manipulated, like Gecko Moria's shadow fruit or something, or Emu's direct possession of them or something like that. Or it could be that they have violently disagreed with King Harold's propositions of turning Elbaf into Peaceland Elbaf. Maybe they've decided they're going to take a stand, and this is a bit like Rome with Caesar and stuff, where all of the senators stab him, you know, in order to do that. Because they're surrounding him, they're all going through. It could be that kind of thing of deposing the king situation. Now, needless to say, Jarl and Loki are very upset by this sight. And then we cut straight away to Skjoppa's place. And he's there having a bath with our boy Shanks. Our boy Shanks. With our boy Shanks. And Shanks still has his left arm. And there's a mark there. What is this mark? It's obviously something important. Okay? Oda wouldn't draw attention to it otherwise. Exactly. Yeah, my brother showed me a slightly larger image of it. So obviously, it's a circle with crosses going through it and maybe what looks like love hearts or something adorning each side of that. Now, I'm in pure speculation mode about this, so take everything with a pinch of salt. But that arm is the one that he sacrificed. He said that he bet on a new era. Now, I'll skip ahead a teeny bit in that Shanks later on in the conversation mentions that he has been to the Holy Land of Marijois and didn't get an opportunity to speak with Harold there. So we know that Shanks has been to Marijois after he started his pirate career. You have to remember, he left Buggy to do his own thing, you know, and seemingly started off his own career as a pirate. At that point, we think that he was established as a pirate, but he could still go to Marijois. Very important. This leads me to think that back during the reverie, when a certain man showed up and wanted to talk about a certain pirate, we've dismissed that recently as being Shamrock. Like that was a large part of what led into the theory crafting, that Shamrock, you know, that this Shanks appearing was not actually Shanks, it was his brother. And I was in two minds about it. I wasn't certain. I never put my money really certainly on Shamrock actually being a brother. I thought that it could still be evil Shanks. So, fair play. I was not right on that. But it could have actually still been Shanks that went to Elbaf at that time to talk about a certain pirate. It's possible. Especially as I'm not sure if Shamrock would have necessarily needed to. And I don't think we got to see the hair really, but I don't know. I'm just saying, I think that could still have been Shanks who went to Marijois at that time. And this sign on his arm, I think it's got something to do with his Celestial Dragon identity. We know that he is of the Figureland clan, which then leads me to go, is it a birthmark or is it a tattoo? Is it a brand or something? If it's a birthmark, then okay. we don't need to worry about what Shanks has been up to. If, however, it's a brand or a tattoo, he's acquired it at a later stage. And if that's got to do with the world government, that's a scary thought, and we could still be going down a road of slightly evil Shanks. You know, who is moral in the grand story of One Piece, really? Food for thought. Either way, I'll get back to it in the chronological order. Forgive me, doing this teching style. Bless you, teching. No editing, it's going up as it pleases. Hopefully people enjoy. So, they're obviously chilling in their bath, or heating up, and Shanks admits that he wanted a carefree pirate life with Buggy. That's quite sweet, isn't it? That would have been a lovely thing to see if Buggy and Shanks had actually been able to go along and do their adventuring together. Because for a while, Buggy was in his darkest timeline. Really? Like, we get those SBS pages where we see, you know, like, oh, what happens to Luffy? What happens to Frankie? What happens to Nico, Robin, etc. in the darkest timeline, in the brightest timeline? For a good while, Buggy has been in the darkest timeline. And it's only through interacting with Luffy that he's actually been brought out of it. Interesting food for thought. I love Buggy, by the way. Fucking brilliant. So, this goes to Scioppa saying, understandable, you were a child of destiny. Now, this could be a translation thing, obviously, bear in mind, but were a child of destiny kind of implies that he no longer is. I don't believe that, though. I think that Scioppa is saying you are a child of destiny or something. And what is a child of destiny? I think that that's somebody who could be implicated in the prophecy or whatever that Roger and everybody has seen at the One Piece. You know, we came too early, like Odin's writings about what's gone on in the diary and stuff. I think that there are people who could be linked into it, and the circumstances of Shanks's birth means that that is likely. Now, here's where I'm going to go off on a bit of a speculation, and here's where I think we need to bring up the topic of Luffy's mother. Child of Destiny could be talking about a celestial dragon or something like that, living in a pirate life, or some kind of like bridging between those things. There has been speculation before that Luffy's mother was a celestial dragon. Right? Bearing in mind the whole thing with the Will of D and etc. and how they're enemies of the world government, but the Monkey D clan has been able to be part of it without even hiding their D initial in their name. I'm just saying, I think there's some food for thought here for speculations on Luffy's mother being a celestial dragon. Destiny's Child. Oh, if we were editing this, then yeah, just put it up like that. There you go, Destiny's Child. Good contribution from my brother there. So they talk about going to Little Garden, meeting Dory and Broggy, which is a great little tie-in between Luffy's adventure and Roger's adventure. In many ways, you know, you can kind of think of, oh, what happened in Roger's adventure? That would have been so cool. We got Luffy's adventure. We've seen all the great bits of Roger's already, just in the context of a different time, you know. So we get Gerd, you know, peeking on the bath. Nice little juxtaposition of the regular thing of the men trying to peek on the women, you know. And Shanks is noticeably very shocked. And we get to see inside of the kind of human giant household, which looks great, you know. We've got Gerd there with Colon, you know. We've got a balcony with this awesome onsen there. Brilliant. And as far as, like, you know, nourishment goes, he can help himself to lingonberry tart and he can help himself to drinks. The lingonberry tart, massive. And Shanks goes straight into that. Now, I can't remember, but I think there was an SBS or something that mentioned about people's favourite foods in the past. And I think that Shanks's may have been lingonberries or something to do with that. So that's a nice little tie-in there. And obviously we know that Shanks likes wine, he likes alcohol and stuff. There's enough alcohol for him to drown in there. So he's happy. And you can see that. Now it's funny as well. Scioppa grabs Shanks' cheek and pinches it and pulls it, and it reacts just like Luffy's would. You know, it's going right to the side. So, you know, I kind of like how we're seeing that. Obviously, it doesn't mean that Shanks has rubber qualities or anything, but it's cool, you know. So, Shanks is busy trying to rat out Scioppa for, you know, the womanizing that he does, and Scioppa tells him to shut the fuck up. But this leads to them talking about Harold, which obviously I've mentioned. They met at Marijois and they got along all right. But Shanks couldn't speak freely in the Holy Land. Now, we're both in this country. I really want to talk to him before it's too late. So this means Shanks was in the Holy Land and he couldn't speak freely because of observation, because of monitoring. Now, perhaps Shanks had snuck in there, and so he didn't get an opportunity to properly talk with Harold. But if he got to meet with him, and Harold would have been under observation or anything like that, they'd have noticed that Shanks was there. So to me, this says Shanks was there above board, clandestine, as a guest. He couldn't talk about certain topics without revealing, certain affiliations and all that kind of stuff. But to the world government, to the celestial dragons and all that kind of stuff, Shanks was chill. Shanks being there was fine. That should raise some alarm bells for people. That should, So we go on, and it says, that day, the massacre at the castle took place. Elbaf's most beloved king, Harold the Benevolent, lost his life. And we can see people getting cut down. In fact, we even see a sword, the sword that's in Elder Gerald's head, being impaled through it. Interesting thing to note. If it was Loki that did that, why is it a sword being used? Loki uses a hammer. All those guards have their spear type things, their glaives. Right? You see somebody going for the forbidden devil fruit that's passed down within Elbaf, and it says, but just how did this man come to be so highly regarded by his people? And here we get the final double page spread, and it looks great. We get to see that the giants were the terror of the One Piece world for the longest time. Dorian Broggy were the giant pirates, who were probably more chill than, other giants and stuff. Because remember, the giant warrior pirates, they were just the pristine crew. There are lots and lots of villages on Elbaf. There would have been other pirate crews as well. Okay? Bear that in mind. But in that age, even ships from the land of the giants evoked immense fear due to Elbaf's reputation. And we get a giant, coming in and peeking into some castle, oh, what's going on here? And then we go to that same giant who was peeking in, getting booted through, just like Loki did to that guard, into the castle by a young King Harold, who is a massive dickhead. He is scum, as is pointed out by the narrator here, okay? And he says, Baraha! Go on, tell me who your god is. King Harold wanted to elevate himself to the position of God, right? We heard before that he was revered as a god in Warland Elbaf for his peaceful type stuff. So it seems like that aspiration has always been a kind of part of him, right? And we've seen other people emulating that as well, like Road, for example. So we get to this point and we're wondering, how is it that Harold went from this absolute scum to being the benevolent, peaceful king? Propaganda. He's always been a dickhead, through and through. You got to remember, this is the guy who allowed Mother Carmel to set up her orphanage that literally fucking kidnapped children and sold them into the world government for use as slaves, spies, etc. It was believed in the past that perhaps King Harold didn't know about it. I am saying he was fully complicit. He has always been scum. Propaganda is the real thing at play here. Propaganda is what's got everybody in Elbaf thinking that Loki is the bad guy. Propaganda is what's got the world government, into that kind of position of forming the peace with them and stuff. So we've got to remember, propaganda is the main thing at play with Harold's story. I think that he will remain to be a dickhead. I don't think there's going to be a transformation of him, after 10 years, after 15 years of rampaging, he looked back on what he did and wept or anything. No, it's always been out of self-interest. It's always been about aggrandizing himself as a god. And who has the legitimate claim on god status in the One Piece world? The Celestial Dragons. We've got people who've wanted to join the Celestial Dragons, like York and all that kind of stuff. I think Harold did as well. So we got to bear that in mind as we're going forwards. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next week. Obviously, this previous week, we were expecting a new chapter and we didn't get it. I'm not sure entirely what the context is, but if it's to do with Oda's health or anything, take as many breaks as you need. And so if we don't get one next week and there's no announcement for it, fair enough. I'm not going to complain, and I hope that nobody else would complain because we must prioritize Oda's health. We must do. especially as we're getting so close to the end. I've been saying to friends for, probably the last 2 years now or something, we are getting to One Piece's end. People rolled their eyes at me. People said, oh, I don't think so. How many times has that been said? And I said, within the next 5 years, I think One Piece will be ending. And I still stick true to that. I think that within 3 years' time, One Piece will be over. Unless there are lots more unexpected breaks and stuff, that's something that we can't account for. So make sure that you're caught up to date. Make sure that you keep up with it. And I think we're going to be seeing some crazy revelations coming out soon. I'm not sure entirely how to end this. This is the first one that I've ever done, obviously. If you've watched all this way through, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you can give me likes, comments, subscribes if you're a massive fan of One Piece's amazing plot, of which I've been going through today. And if you're a fan of my commentary at all, please give me any advice if there's any things that you think that I could work on, any topics or segments or anything that you would like me to incorporate into these videos. I hope to be doing them regularly. I may end up doing some in a foreign country if I'm there on holiday or anything and a new chapter comes out. I'm not going to be editing these crazily. We're doing it teching style. I hope you've enjoyed. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. This has been Muffins for Men, reading One Piece chapter 1152, An Awful Day. And I hope that we can all agree it's been a great day. Bye.